When you think about splitting a URL with PHP or any other language, you usually think, well, maybe I could use regular expressions for this. Well, actually, PHP gives us a function that allows us to take a URL and split it up into parts that you can see in front of you right now. So we've got the scheme, host, port path, query, and a fragment, which is basically anything after the hash in a URL. So we're going to look at how we can do this really easily with PHP, forgetting regular expressions and just making this just simple to do. Okay, so we're going to start with creating a URL. So I'm basically just going to create a variable here that's going to hold a URL. It will be basically anything that you would usually put into an address bar. So I'm going to put an http //codecourse.com. There we go. So let's start with this very, very basic example. And you could use this in any application, really. If you need to take a URL from a user, you may need to analyze different parts of it. And this is where this is really useful. So I'm going to create another variable called parsed URL, and this is going to be using the parse_URL function built into PHP, and then we're going to pass in the URL we want to parse. Simple as that. Let's go ahead and just echo out within pre-tags, just so this looks a little bit nicer. We're going to not concatenate, but we're going to output print r on the URL, and we'll just pass true in there. So we then get this. Oh, if we enter parsed URL. That makes a lot more sense. So here we get an array back. So we can use this as we normally would an array. You could change it to an object if you wanted to, but we've basically got the scheme and the host. So this is automatically detected that we have an HTTP scheme, and we've said HTTP // If this was FTP, you can imagine it would do exactly the same thing and detect that it was FTP. So let's add a few more parts to this URL just to see what we can do for this. Let's say we had a port here, and this does support username and passwords in line, but I don't think that's massively important. It's not great, so we're just going to stick with ports and then the rest of the things. So we've got, say, port 9200. That will then split this and say, well, this is being accessed at port 9200. Then what we have is a path. So any path that you add, it doesn't matter. This won't specifically split this path up for you, but you could go ahead and do that with explode or something like that. So let's say, for example, tutorials/tutorial1. And then if we take a look at that, that will give us that whole path here. Now, if again, like I said, you wanted to split this up further, you could go ahead and do something like path equals explode. And then you could pass in a / because we have forward slashes in there. And then you could enter the parsed URL path. And then from that, we would get, if we just do a quick print r on path and just comment this out, you'll see we get the following. So you've got nothing here. You would need to do a little bit of adjustment here, but you've got tutorials, tutorial1. So that's just a little bit of a sidetrack just to see how we would do that. But let's go back to this. We've got our path now, but what about our query string? Now, obviously, our query string is anything that we send via the URL, which can be picked up on the server. So, for example, we have a question mark, which starts off our query string. We could say something like pretty equals true, and I don't know, number equals 1. It doesn't really matter what we do here. And then you can see here that we have that query output for us. So you can see here how easy this is. We don't really even need to think about it. It just does it for us and gives us the result. Now, finally, less commonly used would be something like the hash at the end of a URL, usually used within applications to point you up and down, badly used for things like hashbang links using JavaScript, which obviously isn't a good solution. So we've got our fragment here, which just says top. So that's a little introduction to using the parse URL function within PHP and just how easy it is to split up a long and complicated URL into smaller parts so you can do what you want with it.